Hey, well, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Heather Renner with Keller Williams Realty, and more importantly, representing Clark County Association of Realtors as your immediate past president. And with me today is Rochelle Gano. She's also one of our affiliates with Clark County Association of Realtors, and more importantly, a seasoned lender with Guild Mortgage, as well as some additional background of which I'll share here shortly. But Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. So I wanted to get on here and do just kind of a quick tips and tricks video, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm sure we have a lot of our members, especially those that are newer to the industry that have never been through a government shutdown, kind of wondering like what's next and all of that. And I know that there's some things that are going on out there as far as communication that's being shared within especially social media platforms and various websites specific to our industry, which is great and informative. And yet at the same time, I think you know, it helps to have a little bit of conversation. So this is going to be pretty, I don't want to say low key by any means, but informal, if you will, and just some dialogue between the two of us. And mainly, the reason why I thought of having a conversation with you, Rochelle, was because of the fact that you not only are you a seasoned lender, but you have a unique perspective to share. I've known you for quite some time. In fact, when I got into real estate, 21 years ago, you were a realtor then as well. And so I think being able to kind of put both hats on, if you will, and be able to speak to what are the thoughts that are going on in a realtor member's mind versus, the things that lenders need our help with when we're trying to deal with our transactions. And so we're here obviously to talk about the government shutdown and the potential impact on the real estate industry. With the recent government shutdown announcement, many of us in the real estate industry are bracing for potential delays and disruptions, particularly around mortgage lending and closings. And while some programs will continue operating, there is that potential for reduced staffing and suspended services, which of course could impact timelines for buyers and sellers alike. So, as I alluded to earlier, our goal here today is to highlight important things that listing agents and buyer agents, or rather our fellow Clark County Realtor members, should know, as well as gain some best practices in knowing perhaps the right questions they could potentially be asking their favorite preferred lenders. And really, again, just to make sure we're all aligned, protecting our transactions and getting our clients successfully to that closing table. So, with that said, I don't have like a series of form of questions per se. I just kind of wanted to touch on some things as it relates to, transactions and things like. So, getting back to just some tips and suggestions on things that practitioners such as myself should be aware of. What are some of the things that you would recommend?
Well, off the top of my head, some of the most important things I feel like are the self-employed borrower. That borrower or buyer may run into some trouble because we expect, or in the past, we've experienced that the IRS transcripts that we usually need to support the income of a self-employed borrower get delayed in this process whenever the government shuts down. So that's a big one I think that we'll run into more than anything else. Another piece would be if there is a federally employed borrower that's trying to buy a home and is in maybe the middle of the process, we would have to wait until if they've been furloughed, we would have to wait until they're back to work in order to close on a transaction.
Okay, okay, okay. Definitely things I think people tend to forget about because we just focus solely on, well, what's their financing that they have, and is that going to be able to go through? And that is obviously an aspect. And truly, the funny thing is it gets even highlighted more. I mean, those are things that we should be aware of during any transaction. But
Sure.
we've got this whole thing going on. So yeah.
Well,
So
and every once in a while, people might think that they could beat the system, but we do have to do 10 days before closing. We do have to verify that they're at work.
Okay, okay, okay. So with respect to and things like this, just as a reminder as a member, part of your benefits is having access to not only Clark County Association of Realtor information, but Washington Realtor information, and of course on the national level, the NAR level. And having said that, yesterday we got ahead of all of this as from the CCAR standpoint, and we had shared on our social media and pushed it out to all of our members that there are some resources available because at that time it was looming. Well, now it's been updated and obviously it occurred.
Yeah.
But there are some different resources that really kind of dive into things that may be affected, things that are not affected, and so on and so forth. And so, if we're just kind of taking a look at the individual loan programs themselves, so FHA, VA, USDA, conventional, Fannie and Freddie Mac, those kinds of things. What can you share with us to maybe like provide some reassurance and ease some concern that may be there?
Sure. We're not expecting any delays with any loans that are FHA loans. Most of their systems are pretty automated for the pieces that we need. So we would expect that those loans would be going pretty smoothly, as well as conventional loans, as long as the borrower has a job and as long as we're not um, running into any of the things we just talked about. Those should go through pretty smoothly as well.
Okay.
VA, we are feeling right now will go through smoothly as long as we don't have an extended shutdown. If there is an extended shutdown, then there is a possibility that um, the workers that are available to do the job we might get some delays because there are fewer workers out there to do it.
Okay. Okay.
And then with USDA, that's one that typically in these situations and in the past, we just can't get guarantees at this point when they're shut down. So we would have to wait until they open up again to get that final guarantee on a USDA loan in order for it to close.
Okay. 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 Great. Thank you for that. So, with respect to you're in the middle of a transaction.
Mhm.
What would you recommend or I guess let me back up a little bit. I'm sure as a lender, we're not encouraging people like freak out and run for the hills and blow
Absolutely
up your
not.
guys' phones with tons of crazy questions. However, that said, you do have a responsibility to your clients and that's to make sure that they're informed and of course, as we stated at the top of this, get to that closing table. And so you're in the middle of a transaction. Are there any questions, I should say, that you should be, connecting with your lenders on as of now?
Yeah, I think as a buyer's agent, you might want to reach out to your clients that are in transaction
Hmm.
and ask if they are a federal employee if you don't have the answer to that question. Or if you know that they're self-employed, have them check with their lender to make sure that they've already requested transcripts from the IRS.
Okay.
If they have not, then everybody needs to be notified that things might be delayed in
Okay.
that situation. On the listing side, um, I think listing agents should probably check with buyer's agents and just kind of ask some of these questions about, who the buyer's employer is and if this is anything that they're expecting to delay the closing process.
Okay. 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 Great. And then, one other important thing to keep in mind are certain insurance policies, like flood insurance, for example.
Mhm.
Can you touch on that at all?
Sure. So flood insurance, anything that where you would get flood insurance through FEMA, that flood insurance is going to be delayed at this point.
Okay.
But there are options that are private flood insurance that they could explore.
Okay.
So certainly that if you're a listing agent, that area in Woodland that is east of the freeway, that's a
Hmm.
typical area that we have to have flood insurance in. And so if we're not going to be able to get FEMA flood insurance, they should start checking with the insurance companies in that area because I do know that some of them offer private insurance.
Yeah, and the great thing about Woodland, I think they're one of the few, as far as the city of Woodland is concerned, municipalities that provide those elevation certificates online. Most of the properties there, I mean, there's a few that I'm from Woodland, so I kind of know all of that. But is
Right.
there anything else that you think that we should know, Rochelle, or any additional tips that are going to help everybody through this?
I think the biggest thing is just being communicating, that you're communicating with everybody along the lines in the transaction. And I think just really calling those clients that are involved in this and making sure that they're completely updated with all this information. Um, in the past, I guess a lot of the government shutdowns have been resolved quickly.
Mhm.
So if everybody can just stay calm and,
Yeah.
and keep their, yeah, exactly, keep their fingers
Exactly. Keep your
crossed that
fingers
they just
crossed.
get this resolved,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but as we move into things, contact their lender. A lot of times we have workarounds for some of these things. We've put these in place in the past because there was a time when it seemed like the government shut down almost every other year or every year there for
yeah,
a while. And so the lenders got smart about it. They found workarounds. They found workarounds that would satisfy Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie
yeah.
Mae, and we went along business as usual. So
Okay.
check with the lenders that you're working with and ask them some of these questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, it sounds to me like the bottom line here is our realtor members should just stay informed, be prepared to educate and guide their clients on these potential slowdowns, while also collaborating closely with, their trusted preferred lenders and just so that we all understand how the shutdown it may impact each specific transaction, but it could be unique to whatever you've got going on there. So yeah.
Yeah, and it may impact very few. So yeah, just stay
Wonderful.
positive.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this has been helpful for people. I just was trying to kind of like pump the brakes a little bit, not to say that we're ignoring it and that we're not aware, but it is very reassuring to hear things like, we have things kind of put in place with expectations of when and if these things do occur, because we've obviously experienced them before. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Rochelle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.